It's been a few weeks since we crapped on ESPN, so before the calendar turns to 2024, I wanted to take a moment and make sure that we got this in one more time. Saturday at 4 p.m., they are absolutely going to get what's coming to them from a broadcast perspective, from really the play on the field, what we'll see as far as ratings and everything else involved. Now, the ads are already sold. ESPN's probably already made their money from this game. So I don't know that that is going to make a huge impact, but the level of play, the competition, just people turning the game off could all impact them for sure. And maybe in the future that causes ESPN to reevaluate the way that bowls work, and we'll see if it has any long-term effects. But Saturday at 4 p.m., when the Georgia Bulldogs and Florida State Seminoles take each other on, they're not going to look like the two teams that combined to go 25-1 through the 2023 season. There have been a crap ton of hot takes every time a Florida State player has gone into the portal or opted out of this game, but that same energy just isn't the same with UGA, though they're both expecting a similar amount of guys that will be out during this game. Florida State will be without a host of its players. Obviously, Jordan Travis being out, but even outside of him, you're missing Trey Benson, Johnny Wilson, Jaheim Bell, Keon Coleman, Bless Harris, Lawrence Toafili, who is returning but is injured right now, and I believe even had surgery. On the defensive side of the ball, Jared Verse, Fabian Lovett, Akeem Dent, Jarian Jones, Renardo Green, DJ Lundy, who's in the portal. I've also been told to be pretty surprised if Braden Fisk, Kalen DeLoach, and Tatum Bethune play, even though those haven't been officially announced, at least at the time that we recorded this. Other guys have opted into the transfer portal and won't play, like Rodney Hill, Tay Rodemaker, and others. Bowl games are absolutely meaningless. I understand that, but they do make a ton of money for ESPN, which doesn't help the players, doesn't help our kids at all. I'm tired of hearing about bowl gifts and cheap watches that they get that may be worth $100 when these kids are getting paid thousands of dollars from the Battle's End and the collectives that their different schools have. I will tell you, I don't think they care about these dumb bowl gifts. I'm sure no kid's going to come out and say that, but that was a cool thing when you weren't getting paid thousands and thousands of dollars to play this game. These bowl games are meaningless, and they also are an injury risk for guys going in the first round. For Jared Verse, for Keon Coleman, I don't want them playing this thing at all. I have no problem with them opting out due to the risk of injury. And ultimately, this bowl game is pretty disrespectful when you think about the fact that Florida State basically earned, by all intents and all accounts, based on what we knew about the playoff committee for the first 10 years of its existence, Florida State earned a playoff spot and was left out. I also don't think that Florida State players have anything left to prove. There's this false narrative out there of, go out there and play out and ball out and put something good on film, and that's really going to help you. I hate to be Debbie Downer on this, but do you really think that Florida State's athletes have a legitimate shot to go out and put something great on film? I like Brock Glenn, and I think he's going to be good for the Noles one day, but do you think that our wide receivers really have an opportunity to go put something out great on film with Brock Glenn throwing the ball this weekend? Do you think that our offensive line has a chance to put something great on film with all of their wide receivers and running backs out this weekend? Do you think the running backs that are there care about that? Do you think Keziah Holmes needs to go out and put something great on film? The idea of that is absurd. Do you think that they need to go put something great out on film against probably still the best team in the country in Georgia? I don't think so. I don't think that there's really an opportunity to do that. They've had 13 opportunities to do that, and they've done it every single week. I don't think anybody on NFL draft boards is thinking, oh, man, I'd really like to take Jared Verse, but I would have really liked to seen what he could have done against Georgia. No, it doesn't matter at all. Same with Keon Coleman, same with Jarian Jones, same with Renardo Green, same with all these guys. There's really no point. There's nothing left for them to put on film. That's a stupid narrative, and I'm tired of seeing it in many different places. Not from you guys. I know that you guys that watch this are much smarter than to put that out. But this doesn't necessarily help ESPN in any way. All of these opt-outs from both teams don't really help the four-letter network. They also probably don't help the future of this BS, meaningless bowl game charade that we continue to have going on. My biggest hope, and we talked about this, was that Florida State would opt out of this bowl game. I tweeted that immediately after the snub. And as the weeks went on, I continued to preach that I hoped that was what would happen, because if they would have opted out of the game, maybe that would have started a chain reaction that then fixed the issues that we have. Now, Mike Norvell doesn't want to be the one to do that. I get that. He doesn't want to be the one that is viewed as cowardly or, taking his ball and going home. I understand that. But I also think that if that had been done, maybe teams start to do that more and more and more in the future when they get snubbed or screwed or left out. And maybe we get rid of these dumb bowl games where you have 40 players between the two teams opting out. In 2020, we all made fun of it, but UF had about 1 billion guys opt out against Oklahoma in their bowl game. And yes, we made fun of it. We laughed, and they got crushed in that game. But that game was stupid that year too. During a COVID year when they had a bunch of NFL talent, they had a bunch of guys going to the league, Kyle Pitts, Kadarius Toney, a bunch of their guys opted out, which I have no problem with. They got the jokes. Mullen even said after that game, this season ended however many days ago in that SEC championship game. Again, we made fun of him for it. He wasn't wrong, but it's the same thing we've been saying since Charlotte. The season ended on that first weekend in December. Whatever happens now, it's just an exhibition. UGA is going to have quite a few opt-outs as well. People aren't really talking about that, but Rusty Manziel of the UGA On 3 site said that there are probably 20 to 22 opt-outs and portal guys that are going to miss the game for the Dogs. Marius Mims is a big one that's being talked about. Brock Bowers, neither one of them seen down in Miami. That's going to be a couple of pretty big losses for the Bulldogs. I'd caution you not to get too excited, though, FSU fans. UGA, number one, is a much deeper team than FSU, so I think they can afford more opt-outs. And number two, most of UGA's starters will play from what I can tell. Now, I'd expect over these next few days we may hear more about opt-outs. We'll do a preview show on that tonight, and we'll talk about it with my guy Brooks Austin. But don't be surprised if most of UGA's starters at least begin the game. I'd expect a lot of the bench to play for both teams, but I'd also expect that there's a chance that it could be pretty tough for the Noles this weekend. And don't be surprised if the game gets a little bit out of hand. But if it does and the game becomes unwatchable, ESPN can only blame itself. I want to talk about that more in depth in just a moment. But first, I do want to thank Knapp Injury Law for their support making this video possible. Listen, we've been telling you guys about them all year. Alex is a diehard Seminoles fan who owns Knapp Accident and Injury. It's a law firm that specializes in car accidents, personal injury, Uber and Lyft accidents, really anything that you can think of where you may need an attorney because you've been injured or hurt. You can give him a call. The number is on the screen, 813-568-3724. You can also go to knappinjurylaw.com. Alex will give you his personal cell phone number. You're not going to be dealing with a case manager or a paralegal. Lock his number in your phone now. You probably don't need him today, but if you do in the future, if you're hurt in an accident, make sure that you give him a call. Let him get you taken care of. We've done some fun things with Alex in the past. We look forward to doing that again in the future. Appreciate them for their support. Again, it's Knapp Injury Law. Again, ESPN only has themselves to blame here today for the situation that it will find itself in on Saturday. They campaigned for weeks for Florida State to be left out, even before Jordan's injury. We don't need to rehash that entire video. We did a good enough job of whining and complaining on it. We don't have to go into it all again. But for weeks, they campaigned for Florida State to be out. Kirk told you the 4 that was going to be in even before Travis's injury. He got the 4 right. Funny how that happens. This crazy, wild thing that no one could imagine, this impossible scenario, ended up being what ESPN got. They also formed the narrative around the QB injury and continued to hammer that home. And week after week after week, Reese Davis, almost with tears in his eyes, cried to Boo Corrigan, asking him to factor in the QB injury. And Boo Corrigan for weeks stood strong. But finally, Reese Davis wore him down, and they ended up changing what they said that they would not do. For all intent and purposes, if you think about it, UGA got screwed too, if you're using the committee's logic. You guys don't think that they're a better team than Washington? You don't think they're a better team than Texas? Shoot, I think they're probably a better team than Michigan. I think right now, if you put them in Alabama on a neutral site field, I still think UGA would be favored in the game. But Alabama jumped them. Why? Because the games mattered. Well, the games mattered for some teams anyway. But UGA got screwed too. There's no chance that UGA is not one of the top 4 teams in the country. There's no chance at all. And so when you look at Florida State getting left out because we didn't think they were one of the top 4 teams, why did UGA get left out? They got screwed as well. I do appreciate some of the national guys, though, that aren't afraid to call out the narrative or call out the BS with a lot of this. Sam Spiegelman of On3 said this: others can debate the merits of the meaningless bowl games, but there's no way you can tell a Seminole player this season that the Orange Bowl is anything more than an exhibition game when a committee of stooges already decided that their 13 wins earlier this year didn't even matter. I've said this before, and I continue to echo, I have zero issue with opt-outs. I have no problem with kids not playing a game that's completely meaningless. Again, after the snub, I tweeted immediately, don't even play it. Reject the Orange Bowl invite. Florida State didn't do that, and I understand why. But ESPN and the committee left Florida State at number 4 for a couple of weeks. Why? So that people would tune into the ACC championship game, so that people would tune into the Florida game. They used Florida State for ratings, but those games were completely meaningless. They meant absolutely nothing. But ESPN got their ratings because Florida State stayed at number 4. Why was Florida State not dropped immediately? Once Jordan went down, they should have been dropped to 7 or 8th. Put them about where you think that they would start to beat teams without Jordan Travis, and then move on. No, that didn't happen. They left them high. They left them high for a couple of reasons. Number 1, ratings. Number 2, they were cowards. And ESPN got what they wanted. The committee got what they wanted. And then once FSU's fate had already been determined in that ACC championship game, they dropped the Noles. And really the greatest travesty in our sports history was complete at that point. But ESPN used Florida State. There's no doubt about it. The committee left Florida State high. Nothing changed on championship weekend. Florida State won an impressive defensive game, and I know that's only okay if you're in the Big Ten, which maybe when Florida State gets there, people respect it. But to think that ESPN and the committee didn't have collusion going on and didn't leave the Noles high and then drop them late when they fit their narrative the best is absolutely horse crap. I think the Noles are going to struggle this weekend. I've predicted FSU to win every single game this year. It's going to be tough for me to do that again this weekend. Not because I'm a Debbie Downer, not because I don't believe in the kids. I just try to be pretty real. I predicted 13 straight wins, got all those right. See if I can go 14-0 this weekend. I'd love to be wrong. I'd love to eat crow. I'd love for Brock Glenn to go out and prove me wrong and throw 4 touchdowns this weekend. Do I think that that's going to happen? Probably not. Do I think that's going to be incredibly tough? Probably. But if FSU finds a way this time, if they find a way against this team, I do know that FSU fans will be insufferable for the next 9 months. They probably will anyway. There's a narrative out there that Florida State fans, this will shut them up. This will prove that they didn't belong. This will prove that the committee made the right decision. I hope talking heads at ESPN don't say that. Not necessarily for my sake, but for theirs. Kirk Herbstreit has needed to go out and get another emotional support dog based on the terror that Florida State fans have been raining down on him. I think most ESPN employees will need a sled full of dogs if they start that narrative. When and if Georgia wins, see, we made the right decision. See, the committee did the right thing. There is nothing that will happen on Saturday that will justify what happened on Selection Sunday. There is nothing that will happen in the Orange Bowl that will prove anything. Florida State could win the game against a depleted Georgia team, and that itself will not even prove that Florida State should have been in. There is no further proof that's needed. There is no further explanation or, hey, if Florida State does this, then we could say maybe we were wrong. No, we know you were wrong. We know how it went down. We know what you should have done. The Orange Bowl doesn't matter. And when people turn the Orange Bowl off at about halftime of the game, and the score's out of hand, and the play is not very exciting, and there's no contest left in doubt, ESPN, again, will only have itself to blame for the narrative they created, for the committee that they pushed and twisted into making the decision that they asked for the last month of the season. And hopefully it will cause sweeping big changes in this BS bowl season that we have. Who knows if it will? Who knows what the final result will be? Who knows how the game goes down? There's a reason you have to play it. But when it goes down poorly, hopefully ESPN can wear it. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks for listening to me rant again. We'll talk to you soon. Go Noles.